Fantastic to meet you, Michael. Congratulations on a brilliant debut feature. So, for people who haven't seen the film before, what is Beast about?
It's about a young woman who's trapped within quite a hostile family environment, and she falls in love with a guy that might be Prince Charming or might be the big bad wolf. It's the quickest way I can describe it.
And it's a very unusual thriller in lots of ways. What was it that drew you to the story, or why did you want to tell this story?
So I grew up on Jersey, and it's loosely inspired by a true case that happened on the island in the 1960s. There was a guy called the Beast of Jersey, and that made a big impact on my childhood imagination growing up on the island, because it is a very safe and quaint and beautiful environment, and it seems so incongruous, these horrific crimes happening there. And it was the first time that I realized as a child that monsters exist outside of fairy tale books, and they're other people, and they could be your next door neighbor. So I kind of always wanted to make my first feature based on those particular crimes.
And one of the things that stood out for me is this sort of unexpected turns of horror, but also humor, that kind of sit next to each other. So how did you kind of capture that kind of tone?
I think even when you explore really dark psychological territory, you need a few jokes in the movie. Because I wanted to create characters that were complex and had different shades to them, and that could be empathetic and charismatic and funny, but also dangerous. I wanted to put the audience in a very precarious place where they didn't know how much investment to put in these characters, and I just thought that's interesting if you can provoke those complex reactions to a character, and humor's one way to do it, So I wanted to, hopefully there's a few laughs in the movie as well as gasps.
And that balance also seems to rest heavily on two fantastic lead actors and actors you've got there with Johnny Flynn and Jessie Buckley. So did you have them in mind when you were developing the story, and how was it working with them?
No, I didn't know their performances, because this is Jessie's first film role, and my casting director had cast her in War and Peace, which is a big show, but that actually hadn't come out yet when we were casting the film. So it was really through auditions that Jessie came in, and she's so blindingly committed to the role, and she's able to shamanistically summon up these really big emotions. I was really just drawn to her as a performer. And then Johnny I knew a bit through his music, and I couldn't quite see him as Pascal. And then my casting director, Julie Harkin, got me a ticket to see Hangman, the Marta McDonagh play, and he plays a very dark character in that. And I thought, this is amazing that Johnny could be, he needs to play the romantic lead and also the potential antagonist of the movie, and the character's something of a shapeshifter. So and then getting those guys together, there was so much chemistry. I felt really lucky to have these two emerging talents, so committed to the film and given so much.
And there's some real sort of whirlwind fun moments actually in the film, but it also goes to some dark places. Were there moments that were particularly challenging to pull off, or real highlights for you?
We made it quite difficult for ourselves when we set very fundamental scenes in terms of the story with very specific weather and daylight issues. Like, we wanted this moment where the moment that they fall in love to be captured when these waves hit a seawall and they're kind of dancing in amongst this kind of storm that happens. And we were just lucky with the weather, but it was also really difficult to shoot. But it captured the feeling that I wanted to capture, the feeling of falling in love. And we were quite lucky at that moment, but we were skirting very close to danger. And then near the end, there's this very long dialogue scene they're having a very dark conversation, but I wanted the setting to be actually quite enchanting and magical, and we tried to shoot that at magic hour, which gave us a very narrow window to shoot. Luckily, it was one of the last days that we shot, and Jessie and Johnny were so in tune with their characters that even within the 2 or 3 takes that we had, they were just completely committed. So it was when we were skirting most close to danger that we got our best stuff.
There seems to be a bit of a running trend with independent film going to kind of these rustic environments in the UK. I'm thinking of particularly God's Own Country from last year. What is it about taking us to these rustic environments do you think captures people's imagination?
I don't know, maybe it's just, I don't know how much of a link there is in some... Francis went back to the place that he grew up, and that's in the north of England. And I went back to the place that I grew up in Jersey. So I think it's just about filmmaker, it's about showing films that are more regional and exploring parts of the UK that aren't seen on screen. These are really different films, but I suppose there's a really strong sense of identity in them, and I think it's great when you get a really strong sense of place on screen. So,
All right, fantastic. Well, thanks so much for your time. Congratulations. Thanks.